conquer the world is to never stop learning. Good day, learners. I hope you're healthy and doing well today. I am Mr. Marvin Ace J. Sensha, and I invite you to join me as I guide you every step of the way in learning Mathematics 7 the simple way. Today's lesson is anchored by the most essential learning competencies, which is M7NS-LG-3, estimating the square root of whole number to the nearest hundredth. Before we proceed with our discussion, it is expected that you have already answered the what I know, what's in, and what's new parts of your module so that you will be prepared in understanding today's topic. Are you ready? Let's start. You have learned principal roots and irrational numbers in the previous module, and you already know how to evaluate square roots that are perfect squares. But what if the whole number given is not a perfect square? How to find the square root of this number? What are the different ways or methods that you can use to look for the answer? These are some of the questions which you can answer once you understand the key concepts of estimating square roots of a whole number to the nearest hundredths. Let's start by recalling the previous lesson. I want you to find the square root of each number. Number 1, square root of 25. The square root of 25 is equal to 5. Number 2, the square root of 64. The square root of 64 is equal to 8. And lastly, the square root of 144. The square root of 144 is equal to 12. That's great! Isn't it easy? Is it? 25, 64, and 144 are all perfect squares. How about if the numbers are not perfect squares, like square root of 7 and square root of 44? Well, even if without using your calculator, you can actually find the estimated square roots of these numbers. Let us answer example number 1. Estimate square root of 7 to the nearest hundredth. There are 3 steps in estimating the square root of whole numbers to the nearest hundredths. Step number 1. You need to find the perfect squares closest, that is, less than and greater than to the given number. Since 7 is not a perfect square, we need to find the 2 perfect squares that are closest to 7. These are 4 and 9, because square root of 7 is greater than square root of 4 but less than square root of 9, or square root of 7 is greater than 2 but less than 3. Therefore, square root of 7 lies between 2 and 3. And since 7 is closer to 9 than 4, we know that square root of 7 is closer to 3 than 2. Step number 2. Make educated guess to one decimal place and try it. Since we know that square root of 7 is closer to 3 than 2, we then square numbers closer to 3 with one decimal place. These numbers are 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, and 2.8. Now let us square 2.5. The square of 2.5 is equal to 6.25. The square of 2.6 is equal to 6.76. The square of 2.7 is equal to 7.29. And the square of 2.8 is equal to 7.84. You notice that the square root of 7 lies between 2.6 and 2.7. Take note, squaring of 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4 is not necessary since square root of 7 is closest to 3. After making an educated guess, let us proceed now to step number 3. You need to decide which is closer. Since 7 is closer to 6.76 compared to 7.29 and 6.76 is the square of 2.6, then estimate further by squaring the numbers 2.61, 2.62, 2.63, 2.64, and 2.65. The square of 2.61 is equal to 6.8121. The square of 2.62 is equal to 6.8644. The square of 2.63 is equal to 6.9169. The square of 2.64 is equal to 6.9696. And the square of 2.65 is equal to 7.0225. Take note, squaring 2.66, 2.67, 2.68, and 2.69 is not necessary since square root of 7 is closer to 2.6 than 2.7. Notice that 7 is closer to 7.0225 compared to 6.9696. Meanwhile, 7.0225 is the square of 2.65. Therefore, our answer to square root of 7 is approximately equal to 2.65 when estimated to the nearest hundredths. Let's try another example. Estimate the square root of 44 to the nearest hundredth. Step 1. Find the perfect squares closest, that is less than and greater than to the given number. Since 44 is not a perfect square, we need to find the two perfect squares that are closest to 44. These are 36 and 49 because square root of 44 is greater than square root of 36 but less than square root of 49, or square root of 44 is greater than 6 but less than 7. Therefore, square root of 44 lies between 6 and 7. And since 44 is closer to 49 than 36, we know that square root of 44 is closer to 7 than 6. Step 2. Make an educated guess to one decimal place and try it. Since we know that the square root of 44 is closer to 7 than 6, we then square numbers closer to 7 with one decimal place. The numbers are 6.5, 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, and 6.9. The square of 6.5 is equal to 42.25. The square of 6.6 is equal to 43.56. The square of 6.7 is equal to 44.89. The square of 6.8 is equal to 46.24. And the square of 6.9 is equal to 47.61. And the square root of 44 lies between 6.6 and 6.7. You have to take note that squaring 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4 is not necessary since the square root of 44 is closest to 7. Then after squaring the numbers closer to 7 with one decimal place, we will now proceed to step number 3. Step number 3, you need to decide which is closer. Since 44 is closer to 43.56 compared to 44.89, and 43.56 is the square of 6.6, then estimate further by squaring the numbers 6.61, 6.62, 6.63, and 6.64. The square of 6.61 is equal to 43.6921. The square of 6.62 is equal to 43.8244. The square of 6.63 is equal to 44.0896. And the square of 6.64 is equal to 44.2225. Take note that squaring 6.65, 6.66, 6.67, 6.68, and 6.69 is not necessary since the square root of 44 is closer to 6.6 than 6.7. Notice that 44 is closer to 44.0896 compared to 43.8244. Meanwhile, 44.0896 is the square of 6.63. Therefore, the square root of 44 is approximately equal to 6.63 when estimated to the nearest hundredths. Now let us have a summary of our lesson for today. And let us always remember the 3 steps in estimating the square root of whole number to the nearest hundredth. Step 1. You need to find the perfect squares closest, less than, and greater than to the given number. Step 2. Make an educated guess to one decimal place and try it. And step 3. Decide which is closer. And that's it. I hope you learned something and enjoyed our session today. If you have some queries, please do not hesitate to communicate with your teacher. They're just one call or text away, and please do not forget to answer the additional activities found in your module. I hope to see you again in our next lesson. Once again, This is Mr. Marvin Ace J. Sensham, always at your service. Keep safe, everyone. Bye.